Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Help the Helpers. And this is going to be an interesting session, I think. We're going to approach the issue of relating not in terms of our group, which we have in the past, which has been wonderful, but in terms of our personal ways of relating, our relatedness. And as we know from Jean's philosophy, or as we believe from Jean's philosophy, we are relating. We aren't separate entities, but we are our own relating to ourselves and to the others in our lives and to the world. And each person has their own particular way of relating, sort of like a fingerprint. And it's so close to who we are. I believe that we get hung up in feeling like there's a good kind of relating and a bad kind of relating. Of course, there are more effective and less effective ways of relating. But I think that when we get caught up in that good, bad, shame, blame, critic kind of thinking, it hampers us in our free expression of relating. I do believe that relating is something that we develop as we go along. So although there isn't this perfect way of relating that we're going toward, we are carrying forward our own gifts and challenges of relating, our own personal style of relating. I think of this sort of the way I think of my art. I'm an abstract artist, and I began by thinking, oh, I can't draw, I can't paint, and this person can and I can't. And that whole way of thinking held me back from being able to really express myself. And the way I think of it now is that it's such a mystery what the paints can do and what I can do and what I want to express. I don't know what I want to express, but it's going to be me, whatever it is. And I want my art to be more and more skillful, but I want it to express some essence of me in it, because of course each of us is a unique take on the universe, and the universe needs all of us, and each one of us has our own gifts of relating. So I think that we all have our challenges of relating. Relating is sort of like the heaven and the hell. Mostly our sweetest moments are moments of relating. And our demons often have to do with our relationships and our way of relating to the world and to others and to ourselves. Jean said at one point in a workshop, oh, the critic. Is anybody not struggled with that? Raise your hands. Stand up. We want to study you. So I think my version of that would be, is there anyone here that doesn't have challenges in relating? Stand up. We want to study you. Right? I loved how Jean humanized all of our issues. And he would talk about it as what we're up against. Jean also said that there are the blue-eyed people and the brown-eyed people. And the blue-eyed people are the people that have trouble finding their feelings. I'm one of those with my blue eyes. And then there are the brown-eyed people who get overwhelmed by their feelings. their feelings are like wild horses that have to be, you have to learn how to ride. The blue-eyed people, their feelings are like these shy creatures that run away in the woods that you have to sort of coax out. And I think that way of looking at relating is so important, that we each have our own temperaments, our own systems, and that it isn't better to be one way or another way. Each of the ways that we're hardwired is part of the complexity of who we are, and that we have to learn to learn to work with that. Just by chance last night, I watched the movie Groundhog Day. How many of you have seen that movie? Raise your hands. It is just a wonderful movie. For those of you who haven't seen it, this sort of negative, cynical guy is stuck in one day, and he keeps waking up to the same day over and over and over again. And then he plays it out in all different ways. He commits suicide. He does everything. He punches the guy who's annoying. He helps the guy that's annoying. By the end of the movie, he has learned something about relating. And it's sort of glorious to watch him in his transformation. I think it's a wonderful metaphor for all of our lives. Maybe even if we believe in multiple lives, we may come back and learn more and more about relating. I don't know, but it certainly fit for me about how I struggle with the challenges of relating and learn to be sensitive to the joys of relating each day. And I think what helps me is this understanding that it's a mystery and a puzzle, and that each day I can explore more about that mystery. I get another chance every day. And as a therapist, those of you who are therapists know that there are some people in your practice that are easy to relate to, and other people that it feels like a struggle. You can't quite get that relating going. And the wonderful thing about being a therapist is that you can think about it and focus on it, and then you get another chance most often. And what you didn't get one time, you could get the next time. And so I like to think of my life that way. We're going to talk about our own personal ways of relating, our own fingerprints of relating. And the three of us are going to speak about that a little bit. And then we're going to give you a chance to focus on your way of relating. When I was thinking about this part of my introduction, I was thinking, well, what can I say about my own way of relating? I could say things that people have said about me. It was a struggle to get in touch with it. And then this morning, in my half sleep, this memory arose, and I thought it says it very well. I was the first child in my family, and my parents were very naive, young parents that didn't know much about relating. And I was a very lonely, isolated child. And I have this memory when I was maybe 3 or 4 of my mother inviting the neighbor children to come and play with me. And all these sort of rough, enthusiastic kids came, and they started playing with all of my toys and completely ignored me. And my mother kicked them all out of the house and said, "You're not playing well. You have to leave." And there I was all alone. And I was so devastated. And I cried and said, "I have nobody to play with." And my mother said, "Well, I'll play with you." And I said, "But you're not a little girl." And that somehow there's something about that that's a kind of model scene, that my life has been about being this only child. My brother and sister were born much later, and wanting to learn how to work and play well with others. Remember, you got that on your report card? In my adult years, I went to a lot of workshops, and workshops were my way of learning how to relate. And now I'm doing workshops to learn how to relate. And I remember in the feedback of one of the workshops, this man that I hardly knew said, my image of you is of a diamond covered in honey, and the sharpness and clarity of the diamond can't shine through." And that was so interesting to me. I thought, in my attempt to get people to play with me, the honey that I'm trying to get people better by honey than by vinegar is obscuring the diamond. And I focused a lot on letting the diamond come through, the sharpness and clarity, as well as the honey. So I think that will be it for what I want to share about myself. And later we'll give you a chance to focus a bit on your own story of relating. So I'm going to turn it over to Pauline.
Thanks, Lynn, and good morning to everyone. I can't actually see the full screen. I'll put it on gallery. So I have a clip of Gendlin. I don't know whether you can play that, Jim, but I just love Gene's sort of clarity. I think that he has almost access to another world, you know, just his voice, or he's always kind of like just soothes me in that he's going to have some good news, you know. And this morning, the good news was that living is always a fresh forming. And he was talking in this clip, and maybe just play it for maybe 2 minutes, but it's the reminder not to actually attach meaning to words, or our usual meaning to words. So that was fresh as well. So it's a keeping with the title of the clip, that living is always a fresh forming. Well, that's maybe being queued up. I'll just say a little of my kind of not being able to form a picture of my style of relating. It's like, it just doesn't make sense. It's almost me trying to put an image on something that's just much bigger than me. You know, it's like I'm that to that group of people, or I'm that, or mostly I am that what I've been told I am. And that's the critic. I certainly would stand up as one of those people that has a very active inner critic. So I suppose in my relating to me, the more that I relate to me in a way that's kind and gentle and nonviolent, then there's more of me to bring that forward. There's more being brought forward to relate to others in that way. And over the weekend, I was stuck. I was thinking, what will I say today? And usually I don't get too bothered about preparing, because it changes as the day goes on, or as the weeks, or just maybe what Lynn, that you had said about carrying forward and the mystery of art, and you wanting it to express something of yourself. So it's kind of like really wanting to stay in the moment and relate from there. And I suppose trusting that as well, that would be the ultimate freedom, to trust that. But I was stuck, and I was badly stuck because a couple of things had happened. And then I got a post from Maeve Langford, and she has been on Help for Helpers, and she was talking about the what happens to us, and how how upset we get when we don't know what to do next, and having to stay in that place. And that really just helped me. That, and then it was the felt shift, and it was like, that's why I actually bother with anything. It's the potential that there's a shift that opens up something again, and then it's just a joy. It's like back into the more of that. So I wrote to Maeve this morning and said something around that I was in the fight, flight, freeze mode, and that I'm beginning to understand that when I'm in those places, that's who my identity is. I am that, rather than relating to that. And when I get that small space, well, I'm already gone beyond the fight, flight, and freeze. And I'm beginning to understand that neuroscience is an awful lot of story to tell us around what happens in the front of our brain. You know, I really like that, because in some ways, it shuts the critic up. I have something to show it and say, see, it's not me. I'm not as bad as you are telling me that I am. Yes. So, and that is like, that's kind of maybe the new story. And I'm thinking that almost that any of us that are investing in that, that's a new identity. That's a new identity. And I think I'll go as far as saying that I think it's a new political identity, in that we are those people now that doesn't identify as either right or wrong, blue or red, all of those. You know, it's like now we're nonviolent communicators. We're invested in listening, you know. And that to me is the most precious value that I want to bring forward. I want to invest in it, but more than that, selfishly, I want to relate to others from that place, you know, that, and when we get it wrong, when we go into fight, flight, freeze, pouring out, fitting in, that it's a no big deal. It's no big deal. I am just frozen, or I have regressed just in that moment. Say sorry. I think Ken Wilber says, clean up, show up, and, you know, and that's it. You know, it's like, it's no big deal. I can say, I'm sorry, I just hurt someone or hurt whatever. And then we become those sort of nice people, you know, that it's safe to be human with, you know. So I think that's as much as I want to say. Jenlyn or Jane will say, and maybe just for a few minutes to listen to what he's talking about, language and the new value in words.
But then when you use a word, it adapts itself into the context in which you're using it. So words mean what they mean in the dictionary, but they also mean what they new and freshly mean when you use them. And sometimes how you use a word changes the word a lot, and that's going to happen to the word body. It will also happen to the word implicit, because implicit usually means something that's all formed and it's under there, and all you have to do is dig it up. I'm going to talk about the body across. So plants have body, living body is what I'm talking about, of course. Plants have living bodies, and so do animals, and so do we. And then there's even a further use of the word body for that implicit consciousness that produces focusing.
That's great. Thanks, Katharina. And yeah, that's there, you know, for anyone that would want to, I suppose, have the experience of going through listening to Jean Gendlin. You know, when we're not ready, it's like almost our body can't take more information in. It's theory. But when we're in need of something, it's really just like manna from heaven or a healing balm, you know. So I was just so glad for his presence. It wasn't he gave me the word, but it's the implied in his carrying forward was that freshness, grace, whatever it was. I just needed it this morning. So thank you. I think I'll just hand it back to you. I think, Lynn.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And I loved that clip of Jean. And now we have Rosa. Rosa, I'm so looking forward to hearing what you have to say here.
Thank you so much, Lynn, for inviting me to be part of this. Yeah, I really connected with your story. I was a very lonely and isolated child myself. And even more so, so after my parents divorced and moved to the US, there were several years in school where I was kind of a bullied kid, and my mom was very depressed, and my dad wasn't around much, and plus he would get super angry if I told him about anything that wasn't going wrong, that wasn't going well, and would like blame my mother and whatever. And so it was hard to be having a really difficult experience and not having anyone to talk about it with. And so when you ask this wonderful question about whether we're more on the expressing feelings end or more on the having a hard time finding our feelings end, yeah, it's kind of nuanced and tricky for me because I feel like I definitely learned how to keep my feelings hidden. I learned how to be quite stoic. But at the same time, when I'm in a space where I feel like somebody is listening to me, it's like, like it can all come pouring out. And so, yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons why I found the simple structures of focusing so helpful, like, oh, we have some time, let's take 20-minute turns. So I listen to you for 20 minutes and then you listen to me for 20 minutes. And there's just such a safety from having some simple guidelines, right? So like, when is it my turn to speak? When is it my turn to listen, right? Like I find tremendous safety in those. It's one of the most painful things, I think, for me has been my dear mother, who I love a whole bunch, and yet she's just learning to kind of say, I can't right now. So there are times when she'll be like, oh, Mom, do you have time? Can I tell you a story? And she'll be like, oh, sure. And then a few minutes in, she'll be like, well, I realize I said yes too quickly and I have this thing I need to do, right? And there's just such a feeling of shame and embarrassment. Like I've started pouring out into what ends up not being a safe space. And I hate that. I have a really hard time with that. So anyway, it's, which reminds me, I should set a little timer for myself. And I don't know how long I have. And that's just like part of my own safety mechanisms of knowing that so what, shall I set like 3 minutes for myself or
Sounds good.
okay. Yeah. So, so having been terrified of groups when I was a kid is really ironic to me that I've ended up as a group facilitator. I was an, clinical social worker for a while. I have an MSW. I never did go ahead and get all the accreditations because that was after I had already discovered ways of working with groups that felt really satisfying to me. And so I realized that I really wanted to go back to working with groups. And yeah, and I didn't want to be in the kind of, because I was, as a clinical social worker, I was working with, clients who really needed me to be there. And it's kind of hard to take vacations when you're a therapist. I mean, there's even movies that have been made about that, right? And I knew that for me, it was really important to be able to work on projects. Since a little kid, I didn't even know what that meant, but I eventually wrapped up my clinical social work practice and came to Germany for the first time, which is where I am now, because the way of working with groups that I had been learning was really taking off here. And I wanted to meet colleagues and I wanted to to check it out. So anyway, I'm here right now for the first time as like on a longer term basis. I have a year-long fellowship at a research institute where they do a lot of work with something that they call transdisciplinary research, which basically means stretching out beyond the academy to include community members and stakeholders in these kind of action research type projects where people are learning by doing how to create sustainable systems and water systems, energy systems, food systems, like that. So they use facilitation a lot as a tool, and they're also very aware that it's something that we can learn a lot about and grow in. And so they see it as a worthwhile subject of research, which is what I had done my research on, is interviewing facilitators of democratic innovations in Austria. So anyway, that's a little bit about me and communication. I do still find it really scary when I don't know, like, is it my turn to speak? Because am I going to speak too much? And so with that, I have like 9 seconds, 8 seconds in which to say, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rosa. Wow. Thank you. You wet our whistle to hear more about that. So let's take a moment and maybe a stretch and a breath. Connect with that body that Jean talks about, that's more than the physical body. Let's give ourselves the opportunity to be quiet inside for a moment. Reconnect with our own personal, unique, irreplaceable selves. Just see what comes to you about your relationship story. What kind of relator are you? What kind of relating do you really enjoy? The moments of being in relationship to yourself, to nature, to others, to the world. What images come to you of enjoyment and that feeling of, oh, I have this, I am this, this is good. And then let's turn to what are the challenges of relating. They may be kind of puzzles that you were born into. The place you had in your family, your ancestry, your biochemical system, or place and time in history, your age. What are the challenges that this life is an opportunity to carry forward And you may be carrying forward, relating from generations. And 4 generations to come. What's difficult? What's bewildering? And see if there's any instance or example that comes to mind. Maybe a question that your life is asking. If you had any clues, any steps on your path of answering those questions, of unfolding those relational challenges, of harvesting the gifts of relating that we all have, that sort of come as surprises. Give yourself just another moment. And then let's come back to our group and to our communal relating here. Okay, and this is time for us all to share about our relating journeys, where we are in those journeys.
I'd like Charles to read his poem.
Mm.
There we go.
Yes, yes.
A touch. This is a poem I had. I had a workshop with Renee Berglers, and at the end, I wrote this poem. A touch, a leaf, sound, the world around. Something in me stirs. Something there, wanting to live. Yes, it stirs. It wants to speak, to cry, to laugh, to hear, to see. The world in me that longed to be. Yes, and you? It stirs in you. What life is there that wants to bear itself to some responding me? Life wants to live in you, in me, walking, finding steps in harmony. I thought that was a little bit of a poem about relating.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Wow, it's perfect. Could you say a little bit more about the poem, about how it felt to read it just now? What?
I think every time I read it, it comes alive in a new way. This time I felt particularly that the words were really resonating for me as I read it. Yeah. Here I'm gonna be, Bob Dylan says he never sings the same song twice in the same way. And when you read the poem, it becomes a new poem every time, because if you live it as you read it, it has that life in it. But I hesitated, wow, should I put that in? But it seemed right, so I just put it in the chat.
That wonderful life in us that wants to live, that wants to relate, that wants more life.
Exactly, that longing, the deep longing to connect and live. Feel. Thank you for asking me to read it.
The asking you to read it, Charles, was a wonderful instance of relating.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, thank you.
It's a very beautiful poem. Very beautiful.
Thanks, Jim.
Do you have anything to share of yours, June?
No, I just had a very busy weekend, traveling to Chicago, seeing a baby. So there's a part of me that just wants to be very quiet right now. Still taking in, even when you're not there. Right.
Quiet relating.
Quiet relating. Right.
I could share. Just Lynn, your story it just sort of reminded me, and also maybe gave me a little bit of the courage to share, remembering how I related as a child and how much shame I still carry about that. And same with what Rosa shared a little bit. Just the how I would sort of, I probably wasn't like a fight flight in this certain way, but how I would submit, like once I was in grade school, like, and having to eat lunch in the cafeteria with other kids and not being popular or sought after, and not having found my way, my personality, or how I was going to present in the world, and always being fearful about like where I'd sit or if there'd be a place for me. And one of the ways I related was by like sharing my lunch or giving my lunch away. And even very early on, self-deprecating, like making myself like in advance of being disliked, or at that age they'd say, who does everybody like better by a show of hands, like Tom or Rachel? And I would vote for Tom so that I wasn't just suffering the humiliation of everybody else, everybody, so I could join in, even if it meant at my own expense, like abandoning myself really, really early. So thank you for that horrendous and shaming memory. And now I'm just joking, but now I know like some of what I carry, and probably why, at least foundationally, relating is so filled with horror in a lot of ways. And with people, relating with people is terrifying. Give me a wild beast. I am much more at home. I mean, I had that experience, I'm sure I've shared, where getting on the safari bus with the other people was far more terrifying in my system than walking with a lion, under a constrained circumstance. The idea that a lion would turn and eat out my insides and I'd be dead. But it would have no particular, it wasn't humiliating me. It was just not the way a person could. It was just, would just be doing its thing. But the people on the safari van, their sort of contempt for me, that was killing me. That was like a cancer. And how just terrifying people are. And there's much more, but I'm going to stop in my effort, which will be in 2026, so it's not happening yet, of becoming more concise. It's a slow build.
Thank you, Rachel. I can just feel that child in you that's terrified of not having a place.
Hi, it's BJ. Thank you, Rachel, and you, Lynn. At those early experiences, the place where tears comes from in me, just it's almost just too much to hear it and to realize the tenderness that little children so need, and just so there's that. And then, Rachel, what you said about your relationship to non-human things makes for me to share today. The book by Miguel Csikszentmihalyi about flow, and he wrote a bunch more then. And I so treasure that I'm able to do that in lots of places, and particularly now in the garden, and how minutes can go by of just sheer life, beauty, wonder, connectedness. And so I'm imagining that those times when we're maybe least aware, I'm least aware of me as a separate being. I have all this nurture and wholeness and fullness as a being. I won't say any more except to say, Rachel, I so identify with that sense of it'll just eat me. I've had it many times in wild places. It'll just eat me, and it's okay. It's how it's relating to the cycle of life, and I'm doing my best. I'm contributing fully by giving my whole self to be eaten, and I don't mean that to be funny. I hope you hear it. It's just maybe it's the most profound kind of relating when we just are not here with all of that stuff from our past and from our reading about philosophy. I mean, types, psychological types, personality. Thank you, guys. It's always a joy to be with you.
Thank you, BJ.
This is Shashi. I'm curious that how our relating is different in a larger group versus when we are in smaller groups. How it becomes what we choose to speak and what we choose to say in larger group, and how do we perceive it's heard, or what kind of feedback we want changes than if we are in smaller groups.
And Sachi, your style of relating fits more with the small groups?
No, my style of relating shifts with where I
Yeah.
am.
It's a little different with the large group and with the small groups.
I just felt that listening to everybody and
Yes.
seeing my feeling how it's different. Yeah.
Mm. I think it's also a little different this morning because we're looking at ourselves and a very basic sort of vulnerable part of ourselves in our relating. So we're sharing something of our own personal selves rather than I shouldn't say rather than um, uh, I was going to say rather than our communal selves, but including our communal selves. But I'm wondering how people feel about this question. How does it feel to look at your own way of relating, your own challenges and gifts of relating? How does it feel to think if the universe is made up of relating, if that's what we are, and you are a unique take on the universe, your way of relating, your potentials for relating, your style of relating, which, Pauline, I agree with you, that word style doesn't exactly fit, but I'm using it in a different way there. What does it feel like to look at that here with us all? Because it's so personal.
I wanted to share something. I don't know if it'll be directly responding to your question.
Anything is welcome.
Like it looks when I look back, because when I sit here, sometimes it's getting like complicated, messy. Everybody's sharing something. Sometimes my heart is beating more, sometimes less. And then when I look back and I see the journey, the path behind me, it's somehow very touching. And I have a sense that each of us has such a past behind. And I see they're kind of crossing, doing all these patterns. And when I'm sitting here today, and I've been so touched with your story, Lynn, with the story of Rosa and Rachel, like the way I can say, yes, I was also lonely. And the way, BJ, you said, it's like being here and kind of allowing. And then I have a sense, I would like to be somebody who will not shut down, take away the light each of us has somehow inside. That's for me recently the way I'm guessing this something in relating. That when I come and I see the other, and the other, like in this poem, and what wants to speak in you, something there wanting to live, this light, this flame, this little candle, and I see it differently, but I won't take it away from you. I kind of enthusiastically can listen and join that, so that it grows. For me, it can be differently. Yeah, I'm on I don't know, something like that. That whenever I come and I listen and I say yes to your inner truth, to your inner light, then it allows us to be, there's more of an exchange, more or less barriers. I don't know. I feel my time is over. So I give it to somebody else. Thank you.
I love that, that saying yes to the person's inner truth, and that makes the more connection. And the other phrase you used was what wants to be spoken in you. That reminds me of that idea that each one of us is a word. You know, what is the word that we are? And maybe we're different words at different times.
Yeah, I wanted just to add that the way I was all my life giving and emptying myself. And now I'm realizing there's a way of giving, sharing, giving the light that makes my light to grow also. So I'm not empty. So this is something like, I don't know, tricky. Sometimes it happens. And then I again sit in the darkness and I don't know.
That's wonderful. A giving in a way that it doesn't empty you, but that it helps you grow. I love that. We're going to go into breakout rooms, and let's have 3 in a room, and let's talk about what our growing edges of relating, or anything that comes to you from this discussion. And make sure that everybody has a turn, as Rosa would say, to know when to speak. And we'll see you back at 9:30.
Oh, maybe 20 minutes. 9:10, 9:35.
9:35. Okay.
Yeah.
9:35. See you back at 9:35. So welcome back. I'm very eager to hear what was generated in your small groups. And I was sort of commiserating, but you didn't hear me or see me. And I was saying it's so strange to suddenly be back in the large group and teleported to this other universe. So anything that you want to share is welcome.
Something really funny happened to me when the group ended. Then another prompt came, join group number 1 with Lynn Preston. After I said, oh my God, Lynn's going to yell at me for something that I did.
Oh,
That's what happened to me. I was like, what the heck? I was good. I stayed here for some time thinking that you're going to come on or something. Then I found something, leave the breakout room. So very strange.
that image
Me too.
of me
I got
yelling at you.
joined Lynn in
Many of
group
us
8.
got that.
Oh, okay.
I missed what you said, Charles.
Well, same as Jim. That I got a message that said join Lynn in room 8. And I said, what? I guess maybe that was for you, Masashi. You got the same thing, and I guess maybe all of us did.
That's
What
so
what-
interesting.
So I like the idea of relating when you're on mute. And to celebrate that, I'd like to tell you the poem that I shared in my breakout room that I wrote when I was in my 20s about less successful relating. Since we only speak through our lawyers, it was natural that they would make love. Afterwards, we approached the bench and, hiding our nakedness behind briefcases, argued there was no conflict of interest because there was no interest.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Can you say something about that poem, Jim? It's very intriguing.
I think the poem says it better than anything I could say about it.
The imagery is wonderful.
It was my style of relating in my 20s. Maybe I should say that.
That's wonderful, Jim. The poem, not your style of relating in your 20s.
Yeah, I would love a copy of that poem.
Maybe you could put
You
it in
wanna
the
share?
chat.
That would involve typing.
Oh, we don't want that.
It will be recorded, so you can look
If
back.
you say it again, I can record it and then send it to everybody.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, please, again.
Yeah, that's worth hearing more than once.
Okay.
Yes,
Here it goes. Brace yourself. Since we only speak through our lawyers, it was natural that they would make love. Afterwards, we approached the bench and, hiding our nakedness behind briefcases, argued there was no conflict of interest because there was no interest.
I can make a copy and send it to Rachel if you guys want.
Sure, please.
Yeah, I would love
yes.
that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I kind of like it as a greeting card.
A tote bag, a scarf.
Just my way of relating.
The possibilities are endless here as we shift into profiteerism or whatever.
I had a sense of a relating dance where one comes right up to it and then back again. Of a wanting to connect, but no.
When you said that, Laura, I pictured this sort of tribal dance of naked people with their briefcases hiding them in a circle, sort of dancing around the fire.
I imagine something more ordinary, which is having to relate with someone that you don't have any interest of relating with. And what kind of dance is that? So difficult. And yet we all find moments like that. Yeah.
Jim, thank you for sharing your poem. I experienced it as sad and painful, and it reminded me of my recent divorce that I did not choose. Thank you.
I'm thinking of Jean's comment about wanting and how when I find myself in conversation that doesn't feel meaningful and is chatty and on the surface, and it's opaque and it doesn't I want to be pulled in. What am I going to do? What am I going to do with that? What does my body know about that? because there's a lot of wanting. I want that meaningful conversation. And I just had a meaningful conversation with Laura. And it was joyous, kind of thrilling, and very ordinary. Very ordinary. And I'm satisfied. I feel satisfied just for a moment. And this is my first time here, but Katerina said, these guys are intimate. And I'm like, what?
So happy to welcome you.
Yes, welcome,
Yes,
welcome.
yes.
Yes.
You know, I want to share a relationship I had with a person, and I wish that I would have related differently. I was riding in a very crowded bus in India. It was very, very crowded. It was, people were sitting. I was sitting. I was not standing. I was sitting, um, looking like pretty important in my seat, or not important, but like, this is my seat, you know, I have it now. And there was a man standing right next to me, an old man with the crumpled clothes and stuff like that. And he had a piece of fruit. I don't know what it was, a peach or something. And he started eating it, and some of the juice dripped on me when he was eating.
Wow.
I looked at him like, you uncouth. You know, I didn't say anything. It was no talking. I looked at him in a sense of disapproval and putting down and disgust. I wish I could have said, it's okay, don't worry about it. That's what I think I should have said. And I would like to be mindful of that in all situations. But in that, you know, that was a relationship. That was a relationship unspoken on a human level. And I still have that memory of my reaction. And only today I knew what the right answer would have been to that. Because I still play that scene in my mind. And I said, oh my God, how disgusting, you know? And how would he have felt? And I should have said, it's okay. Just wipe it off, you know? I think there was a missed opportunity. And maybe I gained from this is that it would have been nice to say, it's okay.
Wow.
If I may say, I'd like to give you permission to let it go, that you learned a lesson and let it go.
No, I want to remain mindful of that, that in certain situations we're absolutely disgusted with some situation, that what is the best option? What, you know, it wouldn't have costed me anything to say, it's okay. You know, anyway, I don't know what it means, but anyway, I just.
You know, it's so interesting. I just want to respond to that with kind of a growing realization that I've been having about our human nature. Like, I think so many of us have a tendency to replay moments where whatever it was that we did wasn't really necessarily the best thing to do. And it's just so interesting to me that the way that we're designed, that our organism kind of registers something as a, I don't know, like a stopped process or something of sorts, that something there that we still need to learn from. Because I remember going to meditation retreats with meditation teachers and, you know, very famous, well-known teachers, and they would tell stories about how, you know, when they first started to meditate in their 20s or 30s or whatever, they would remember some incident when they were 6 years old, when they had been mean to a neighborhood kid and they felt really bad about it. And so I'm just saying, like, I don't think we should beat ourselves up. That's not at all what I'm saying. And of course, we need to be able to find ways to forgive ourselves and to learn from it. And maybe we're not going to forget the incident, but at least to loosen the charge around it. My husband used to be an emergency room doctor before he retired, and in a hospital where he worked, when there was a bad outcome, when a patient died through an error, they would have these gatherings that they would call forgive and remember. Like, let's talk about what happened. Let's forgive ourselves, but let's remember and learn so that it doesn't happen again, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, I was really moved by hearing about that because I think that's what we need to do with ourselves and with each other and all that, right? Like, how do we forgive and remember so that we don't do it again?
Maybe that's our closing remark for this morning.
Oh, yeah,
We're
that's
just
right.
getting
Okay.
going, and it's 10 minutes to. Were you going to say
Right.
something, Charles?
Just I was very moved, and I would have said more, but very touched. I could easily have seen the first response. You once said, Lynn, we're responsible for not responsible for our first response, responsible for our second response.
Yes.
And this is your second response, and it's a very moving second
Yes.
response. So thank you.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
I wanted to say that, Shati, too, that whatever that man needed or whatever I was certainly was moved by the love and compassion just today. So that's valuable, you know. So thank you for that.
I
Thank you.
just wanted to reflect, Shakti, that part of what you said was that when you were in your chair at sitting on the bus in India and like going home and maybe from a job, but there was a certain like an attitude or approach that maybe was that's possibly where the change can take place, because had you been full of curiosity or feeling like a part of all the humans with you on the crowded bus at rush hour or whatever, that approach is maybe the place, not just in the time of reaction where you're already kind of irritated and important and so forth. So just, I heard both of those things, like from where you started and then expecting of yourself to almost be able to change on a dime. You know, you're kind of in one character, and then to be like, oh, may I help you, when you're in a kind of like closed in, sturdy stance. So it might be just that noticing of the stance. That's, I find my attitude, if I'm setting my attitude or my orientation, I call it, then other things flow. But if I've not set it, or it just is its default, then people are not going to get good stuff from me. So I hope that's helpful. I just wanted to reflect those two things and also use up 2025 where I'm not being concise yet.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, there's so much more to say, but let's hear Dorothy's poem.
Okay. It's called The Rivals by Mark Van Doren, an American poet, who it was interesting to see he was a member of the Society for the Prevention of World War III. And this was in 1935. The Rivals. On a night of whirling snow, when every twig and star is dead, there is a house where I can go and knock and enter and be fed with fire and wine. And as we grumble, winter ceases on the panes. The outer heights of darkness tumble down and in upon our brains. And sitting there, so bitter bright, we build a season of our own, of cynic ice and sudden white, blasts of understanding blown.
Well, that last line, Dorothy, was laughs of understanding.
Blasts, like a blast of understanding blown.
Ah, wow. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, people. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Phil, for coming.
Thank you. Good to see everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone who would like to be at the
Thank you.
planning meeting, you're welcome.
Yes,
In
that's
5
right.
minutes,